Welcome back. I started this video over a week ago. I had started to say, you know what, I don't think it's going to happen, but we're going to do this today. Because sure. So the schedule this year is going to be interesting in that this is the schedule with the Olympic break. This schedule may change. So if they can't come to an agreement on how to make the Olympic break work, if all those discussions fall apart between the IOC and the NHLPA, what I have on the board here is going to fall apart. So what I've done is I've gone through every single team's schedule and I've mapped it out. And I did all this. It did take a while. I started this over a week ago, and then everything happens with the draft and free agency, and it kind of gets put on hold. But the season starts October 12th. We all know this. Seattle at Vegas and Pittsburgh at Tampa. Those are the only two games on that night. And it is the slow start to what will be a very busy season. So, by my count, it's my count, so there are going to be mistakes on this board. I am fully aware there are going to be numbers on this board that may or may not be 100% accurate. So, 10 to 13 games in a night. So, big nights. There's 5 of them in October, 6 of them in November, 9 in December. Like, they've really crammed games into December. Normally, you'll see teams playing maybe 11 or 12 games during December. We've got teams playing a lot more than that. 7 in January, 2 in February. So 2 pretty busy days in February, and then you have the All-Star break is in there and the Olympic break as well. 9 in March and 8 in April. Now, the really big nights, 14 or 15 games, because we do not have a single night where there's 16 games. There will not be a night where all 32 teams are playing this season. That record will be set probably next season. But there's one night in October of 14 or more games, 1 night in November, 2 in December, 2 in January, and 3 in April. So none in March and none in February. So what this means is that combined, I have 6 pretty big nights in October, 7 in November, 11 in December, 9 in January, 2 in February, 9 in March, and 11 in April. So I had a really busy season where during the regular season, for newer subscribers, I watch every game. And I try to watch parts of every single game. I try to make sure I know what's going on. So when I'm covering hockey for the channel, I watch all 31, now 32 teams as much as possible. And so it does get to be a bit of a challenge on nights where you have 10 or more games. It can be tough. And this also would include weekends where you're going to have matinee games. We don't have the start times for these games yet, so we'll see how it all works out. We know the start times, I believe, for these two. Tampa's the early game, Vegas is the late game. Those are both on ESPN, as well as I would think on Sportsnet. So I'm going to go through each team, and I'm not going to go into like severe details. What I did was I did back-to-backs or the first column, and then I went month by month. So Anaheim, they have 11 back-to-backs, so that is 2 games and 2 nights. I didn't get into 3 games and 4 nights, but every team has a lot of it. There are a lot of 3 games and 4 nights. There are a lot of months where teams may not play back-to-back games, but they play every other night all month. And so when I do season previews, I'm going to get into that part of it as well. By the time I start the season previews, you would think we'll know for sure whether or not there's the Olympic break. But the other schedule, I get the feeling that it may just pull games out of April and plunk them into February. We know there's 2 different schedules, but we'll see. So there's 11 back-to-backs for Anaheim, which is low comparatively speaking with most of the rest of the league. 10 games in October, which is tied for the most games in October with Montreal. Then 13 November, 15 in December, 14 January, 2 February, 15 in March, and 13 in April. So it is a busy time. Again, February, we only have a few games for most teams. Arizona. So the schedule maker doesn't like Arizona and apparently doesn't like Buffalo either. Both teams have 17 back-to-backs. 17, which seems like a lot because it is. 17 back-to-backs is the most we have. We have 16 here for Philadelphia. We have 15 for Minnesota, for LA, for Columbus, as well as for Nashville, New Jersey, and for the New York Islanders. And yeah, so Arizona, it is a rough overall schedule with 17 back-to-backs. The scheduling is roughly the same across the board. There's not one month where they really get destroyed, although they have 15 games in April, and the season ends on April 29th, so that's more than a game every other night. Boston, they also have 15 games in April. They have 15 games in March, so that's 30 games in 29 in the last 60 days. So it's going to be a rough schedule. They have 13 back-to-backs. They only have 7 games in October. So they get off to a bit of a slow start. There are a number of teams that have 7 games in October. Buffalo, as I said, have 17 back-to-backs. Their busy months are 15 in December and 15 in March. They have 4 in February. That's that they only have the 1 week where they can schedule the games there. Calgary, 14 back-to-backs for them, 8 games in October. And then for them across the rest of the way, it's very, very similar. And I thought it was interesting looking at this board and putting this together. The scheduling is rough for everybody. Because I know whatever team you cheer for, if you look at their schedule, you're like, man, our schedule's brutal this year. Yep. And we'll get into, as I said, when I do the previews, I'll get into the long road trips, the long homestands, and all of that wonderful stuff, right? Carolina only has 12 back-to-backs. Only. 13 in November, which is right around average again. 14 in December, about average. Everything's average, and then you get to March where they have 16 games, which is a lot, and 15 in April. So they're going to have a busy end to their season. 31 games for them in the final 2 months of the schedule. Chicago has 27. So that shows how much busier some teams are than others. So Chicago has 14 back-to-backs. They have 9 games in October, so they have a busier start to the schedule. 12 in November. And then in January, I think that's the biggest number we have on the board. They have 17 games in January, to where I double counted that. I was like, 17 games in January. That's a rough month of hockey. January could very well be that make or break for Chicago. Colorado, 11 back-to-backs. Not too bad of a schedule, but both December and January, 16 games each. So December and January are rough. Coming out of that may very well decide just how good they are and if they're contenders and all that other wonderful stuff. Columbus, 15 back-to-backs for them. 8 in October. Their busy month is January with 16. They also have 15 in April. Dallas has 12 back-to-backs. Not too bad. And they have 14 games in December, January, March, and then 16 in April. So 30 games in the final 2 months for them as well. Detroit has 13 back-to-backs. Their busiest months, January, they have 15 games, and April, they also have 15 games. So April's going to be a very, very busy month, and that'll be right after the trade deadline, which I believe is late March. There's going to be some craziness going on after that. So for Edmonton, they only have 9 back-to-backs, which is the lowest number on the board. But they have 15 in December, 15 in January. So they have 30 games over a shorter period there because you have the 3-day Christmas break in there as well. And they still have 15 games that month. So that's a pretty busy December. In fact, of the December numbers, 15 is almost the highest, below 16 for Colorado. 15 as well for Nashville in that month. Vancouver, Vegas also have 15. Calgary with the 15. So, overall busy. Florida, 12 back-to-backs for them. And the one thing you can look at with back-to-backs too is you know that you're probably going to see the backup goalie one of those nights. So it's unusual for a goalie to play both ends of back-to-back games. So the teams with more back-to-backs may be more reliant on having a better tandem. So again, it's Arizona, it's Buffalo, it's LA, Minnesota, Columbus, Philadelphia, Islanders, Rangers, Nashville, Seattle is in that realm as well. Seattle has 15 back-to-backs. LA with the 15 back-to-backs, 16 games in March. That's going to be a pretty busy month for them. They also have 5 in February, which I think is tied for the most. It is with Washington, Arizona as well. So 5 games in March, or in February. Minnesota, 15 back-to-backs for them. 8 games to start the season in October. And then they have 32 games combined between March and April. So 16 games in each month. 32 games. We saw a crazy schedule this year, and I thought, well, we're getting back to an 82-game schedule. It's going to get a little bit lighter. But with that Olympic break, it's not. It's just going to be 82 games now instead of 56. Montreal, 11 back-to-backs for them. Not bad. However, they got 16 games in January, 15 in March. They do only have 12 in April. So if they play their cards right, if they can get themselves into a pretty comfortable playoff spot, the month of April is not bad for Montreal, and that could help them out. Nashville, 15 back-to-backs, as I've stated, 15 games in November, 15 in December. That's their busiest time. They have 28 games combined between March and April. New Jersey, 15 back-to-backs. They're pretty standard across the board. 14, 14, 14, 14, 15. It's pretty busy, yes, pretty consistent though. And again, the 15 back-to-backs, that makes up 30 games on the schedule. Same thing for the Islanders. Now the interesting thing with the Islanders is they start the season with the longest road trip in team history. 13 games. 13-game road trip before they come home and they open the brand new UBS building. So what's interesting is that's in November, right? That they'll play their first home game. Those 13 games, if they can be, say, I don't know, 8-5 in those 13 games, they could honestly have a pretty good season for themselves, because after those 13 games are done, of course, they have a very home-friendly schedule. So as long as they can have that really solid road trip, which San Jose had a long road trip to start last season, and it didn't end up being a bad thing for San Jose. In fact, their road record ended up being better than their home record for a large portion of the season. So the other thing with the Islanders, 7 games in October, which is tied for the lowest number on the board. 12 in November, and then it gets busy. 15 in January, 16 in March. So January and March are big months for them. The Rangers have 14 back-to-backs, 9 games in October, and then it's pretty standard that it's 13, 14, 14, 14, 14. I'm not counting February in there because we know February is only going to be a handful of games. But it is a pretty evenly paced schedule. So, yeah. Ottawa, 12 back-to-backs. Not bad. 15 in November, 15 in January, 15 in April. Playing every other day. Philadelphia, 16 back-to-back games. They have 30 games combined between March and April, but their overall schedule, when you look at the number of games per month, is right in line with other teams. Pittsburgh, 11 back-to-backs, which is one of the lower numbers in the league. But that also means when you see the lower number of back-to-backs, there's a lot of time where they're playing every other day. And so that's the case with Pittsburgh as well. 8 games in October to start the season. And then their big months are 15 in January, 15 in March. San Jose only has 10 back-to-backs, so that's good news for them. And interestingly enough, how their goaltending pans out is going to be a big part of the storyline for them again this year. They have 16 games in April, so it is a busy April to close out the season. Before that, it's not out of line with other teams. It's like if you compare it with Pittsburgh, they have the same number of games in November, same number of games in December, 2 less in January, 1 less in March, and that's how they build up the 3 extra games they need to play in April. So, and again, it just seems weird to look at a month and go, yeah, so 13 games, that's a pretty light month. It just doesn't feel like it should be. Especially when that's December, where again, usually it's like, 11 games. It's a pretty light schedule in parts of December, not this year. Seattle, as I said, 15 back-to-backs. 16 games in January is their really busy month. They only have 27 between March and April. So their March and April are a little bit lighter than some of the other ones we see on the board, like Carolina's 16 and 15. The Minnesota Wild 16 and 16, so 32 for them. So yeah, 27 means that there's 5 games in hand that Minnesota will have on Seattle at that point in the season. And then it's a matter of winning those games in hand, right? St. Louis only has 13 back-to-backs. It just seems weird to say 13 with that and only. Their busy months, November they got 15 games, April 16. A lot of teams with 16 games in April, including Tampa. Tampa only has 12 back-to-backs. Not an overly arduous schedule, but it does end with 31 games between March and April. So busy months there. Toronto, 12 back-to-backs for them. And their schedule almost mirrors that of Tampa Bay. They play 1 extra game in October, 1 extra game in November, and after that, it's pretty even. Although they have 29 games between March and April compared to the 31 for Tampa Bay. Vancouver has 10 back-to-backs. You expect a schedule to be rough for Vancouver. Again, when we get into the preview, we can discuss the dreaded East Coast swings. 2 years ago, of course, Vancouver's East Coast swings were a problem. Well, 2 seasons ago, They were a problem. We'll see if that's the case again. So October they have 9 games, and then from there isn't really a month where it's really bad, but they only have 26 games between March and April, so they play a lot earlier on, a lot more than some of the other teams in the league. So again, we may see Vancouver as a team that is facing a situation where they may have to catch a team or two where those teams have games in hand. We'll see, but that's what happened this year a lot. Vegas, 12 back-to-backs for them. Not a bad schedule overall. 16 games in March is their busiest month. Washington, there's 12 back-to-backs there. Their busiest months, 15 in November, 15 in April as well. They have the 8 games in October. And then the other 3 months have 13, 13, 13 because February is 5. They're honestly pretty busy in February considering how many days there are that you don't have anything in the NHL schedule. And then you have Winnipeg at the bottom of this with 11 back-to-backs. Their busiest months are January and March, 15 games each. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to cover this. The Chicago 17-game January should be interesting. And as I said, when I get into the season previews, I'll talk a little bit more about the scheduling for each team. And maybe get into here's where they could fall apart. Here's where they could really take off, that kind of thing. But it is interesting that there are no 16-game nights. So when I'm making up the review boards, I don't have to worry about needing all 4 completely. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 times this year, I will have 14 or more games. And there'll be more times than that I will need all 4 review boards. So it's going to be busy. It's going to be a busy year, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If they had started the schedule usually it's the first week of October, right? So you would have had more games in October, minus the Olympic break. You would have been able to spread things out. But this could be the one thing you have to think about with this, and getting into how busy this is. If you have players on the team you're following or cheering for, who tends to have, if it's a team that tends to have a lot of problems with injuries, this schedule this year could be really rough. Because again, it feels as busy as the schedule we just finished, that 56-game sprint that was really rough. And this is an 82-game sprint. That Olympic break in between is important, but then you have to worry about guys going over to the Olympics and getting hurt. And it can happen. It can absolutely happen. And of course, in the event that they can't come to an agreement with the IOC, does the entire schedule get changed? Or is it just the schedule in February, March, and April that's affected? Do you pull everything 3 weeks forward and end up with the schedule ending at be April 8th? So that's the question I would have. I know they have another schedule kind of under lock and key just in case, but we'll see what happens. So there's my question. Are we going to see this schedule play itself out? Are we going to have the Olympic break? Or will there actually be no Olympic break for the NHL because they can't come to any kind of agreement? And do we see a different schedule? And how do you feel about your team's chances with their schedule as it's currently constituted, as long as this is the one that they end up using for the entire season? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. And I thought this would be a fun thing to look at as soon as they brought out the schedule. I was like, I want to look at this because we didn't finish the schedule in 2019, 2020. 2020, 2021, we just had the divisional play. And so I wanted to take a look at just how crazy it could get this year. And the answer is, pretty crazy. So let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.